Oh boy, this is an interesting issue. Remember, they're looking for investigators' DNA here because they believe evidence was planted, namely evidence relating to that taillight. Karen Reed had the cracked taillight on her SUV. Did she bump her own boyfriend's car in her driveway? We know we've seen that surveillance video many times, but the puzzling thing that prosecutors are hanging their hat on is that there's glass from that cocktail glass that John O'Keefe walked out of the bar with that was found in the taillight area. And so the defense wants to see if any human DNA was found there, perhaps as well not belonging to John O'Keefe. Let me bring in my guest now, attorney Ted Spaulding in the studio with me. Ted, good to see you. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Do you think something stinks up in Boston?
It does. You know, when I first looked at this case, I was kind of hit by, okay, it's always a defense, right? We hear it all the time. The prosecutors, the police, they've planted something, they've done something wrong, it's not our client. This one actually has teeth to it, it seems like, right? I mean, we've been hearing about all of this, and that folds into this hearing that we're having today about all of this DNA fighting, about wanting to get at some of the communications and things like that, and it's so super interesting to me because normally you don't have such specificity when it comes to those types of things. So here we are, the defense actually has some good things to argue to say, look, this should be relevant. We should be able to get access to these things. And I tend to agree with the defense on what they were just talking about, which is we should be able to test ourselves the DNA.
Right, right.
It's only fair, right?
Not just rely on the state police crime lab testing because they don't believe the state police investigator on this was fair and impartial.
Right.
They believe that because he has close family connections with both families, the Alberts and the McCabe's, that his, impartiality was jeopardized. And hey, I mean, look, I don't know if the investigation was compromised or not. I'm not privy to it, but I do know that even just the appearance of impropriety, right, Ted, that should be avoided.
Right. And so why fight that? You know, it raises that question. Now, of course, the jury's not going to hear any of this ultimately. This is all evidentiary stuff, but for the public, certainly, who wants to know that the process is legit, why fight something so simple as equal access to DNA, to be able to have an expert, have a battle of experts and things like that? It happens all the time, both criminal and civil. Yeah. So why are we fighting so hard? Raises that question.
Yeah, it sure does.
Much less the other things, the communications and everything else. So.
Right. And also, I understand that they're saying this is a vehicular homicide. I understand that. But I don't think I've ever come across, a case where the state troopers, the lead investigator on this, like, why weren't there other homicide investigators brought in? He's found in a lawn. Also, it's not on the roadway. It just stinks to high heaven. And the Attorney General's office has detectives that work for them and are employed by the AG's office who should have had this case from the outset, in my opinion. It stinks. And now these county prosecutors have it. I don't know if they'll keep it. Ted, we'll talk more in a couple of minutes. We got to hit a break. We'll go back to that hearing live in Boston in just a moment.
Tonight,